That evening at the graduation party, my daughter was smiling the way she always did when she was trying not to cry. I know that smile. I've known it since she was 4 years old and dropped her ice cream cone on the sidewalk and decided she wasn't going to let anyone see her fall apart. My name is Judith Calloway. I'm 63 years old. I live alone in the house where I raised 2 children, in a neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, where the maple trees have been dropping leaves into my gutters every October for the past 31 years. I was a high school English teacher for most of my adult life. I believe in words. I believe they matter, that the ones we say out loud and the ones we swallow down have different weights, different consequences. I didn't know that night would change everything. But I think some part of me had been bracing for it for years. My daughter's name is Natalie. She's 34 years old. She has her father's dark eyes and her grandmother's stubborn streak and the laugh that fills a room when she lets it go. She graduated from Ohio State with a degree in nursing and spent years building a career she was proud of. She loves her patients. She loves being useful. She is one of the most capable people I have ever known. She married Ryan Holt 6 years ago. The party was at his parents' house, a big colonial in Dublin, one of those neighborhoods where every lawn is perfect and every SUV is less than 2 years old. Ryan's father, Gerald, is a commercial real estate developer. His mother, Connie, does charity work and sits on 3 different boards and has never, in all the years I've known her, said anything that contradicted her husband. The occasion was Natalie's completion of her nurse practitioner certification. 2 years of night classes while working full-time, while raising their son, while managing a house that Gerald had once described, right in front of her, as the project Ryan took on when he married a woman with ambitions. I had driven 40 minutes to be there. I brought flowers, yellow tulips, because those are Natalie's favorite. I was wearing a blue blouse and the pearl earrings my mother left me. I was ready to celebrate my daughter. I should have known something was wrong the moment I pulled into the driveway and saw Natalie standing just inside the front doorway, greeting guests with that smile. Her shoulders were pulled in. She was wearing a long-sleeved dress. It was May. She came to me quickly, kissed my cheek, whispered, "I'm so glad you're here, Mom. How are you, sweetheart?" I held her hands. They were cold. "I'm fine, just tired. I've been hearing just tired for 3 years. That's when I started noticing the tired wasn't just tired. I went inside. The house was full of Ryan's colleagues and Gerald's business contacts. There was catered food on the dining room table, a bartender in the corner, string lights on the patio. It looked like a party for Ryan, attended by Ryan's people, celebrating something they were willing to acknowledge, because they had run out of reasons to minimize it. Ryan found me near the drinks table. He shook my hand the way he always does, firm and brief, like a business transaction. "Judith," he said, "glad you could make it." "I wouldn't miss it," I said. He smiled. "Of course, that was it. No, how was the drive? No, can I get you anything?" He turned back to the group of men he'd been talking to, and I watched Natalie drift toward the kitchen to check on something nobody had asked her to check on. I found a seat near the window and watched. That is what mothers do when they know something is wrong but cannot name it yet. They watch. I watched how Natalie refilled everyone's glasses before her own, how she laughed at Gerald's jokes a half-second too fast, how she glanced at Ryan before she spoke, every time as if running her words through a filter she hadn't chosen. I watched her son, my grandson Owen, who is 7, sit quietly in the corner with his tablet when every other child at a party like this would have been running circles around the adults. He was too still. Children that still have learned that stillness is safer than noise. The moment came about an hour in. Natalie's colleague from the hospital had come, a woman named Priya who had taken the certification program alongside Natalie and finished a few months before. They were standing together near the mantel, laughing, actually laughing, and Natalie looked more like herself than she had all evening. Ryan walked over. He put his arm around Natalie's shoulders, and even from across the room I could see her body change, the way a door closes. "She finally got there," Ryan said to Priya, with a smile that didn't reach anything. "Took her long enough, right?" Some of us were starting to wonder. Priya laughed, uncertain. because she didn't know what else to do. Natalie's smile stayed on her face, but she had stopped being behind it. "Ryan," she said quietly, "can we not?" "What? I'm proud of you." He said it like a fact he was disputing. "You don't sound proud." "There she goes." He looked at Priya, then out at the room. "This is what I deal with. Can't take a compliment." Gerald was nearby. He raised his glass. "Ryan's right. Natalie, learn to take a win. God, women today don't know how to let a man be happy for them." Connie, standing beside him, looked at the floor. I set down my glass. I did not decide to stand up. My body made that decision before my brain caught up. One moment I was sitting, and the next I was walking toward my daughter, and the room was very far away and very close at the same time. But before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something. I need you to know who Natalie was, who she still is, somewhere underneath all of it, because what you just saw in that living room was not my daughter. That woman, shoulders hunched, smiling at the wrong moments, shrinking every time her husband opened his mouth, that was not the girl I raised. Natalie was 8 years old when she told me she wanted to be a doctor. I said, "Then let's figure out how." She said no, she'd already figured it out. She just wanted me to know. That was Natalie. She had a plan before she needed one. She read medical encyclopedias from the library like other kids read comic books. She volunteered at a senior center starting at age 14. When her father, my husband Thomas, was diagnosed with heart disease in her junior year of high school, she researched his condition more thoroughly than his cardiologist explained it, and asked questions at every appointment that made the doctors shift in their chairs. Thomas passed away 11 years ago. It is still the loss that defines my life. After he died, it was Natalie who held the family together. She cooked, she organized, she drove her younger brother to his appointments. She called me every single night for a year to make sure I had eaten dinner. She was 23 years old and she carried grief like someone twice her age and kept going. When she met Ryan at a hospital fundraiser, she called me the next day. "Mom, I met someone. He's confident. He knows what he wants." I asked her what he thought about what she wanted. She laughed and said he was supportive. "He says he loves that I have goals. The early months seemed fine. He was attentive, organized dinners, sent flowers to her workplace. He called her driven in a tone that sounded like admiration. I liked him well enough. I wanted to like him." The first thing I noticed was small. She stopped talking about her certifications when he was in the room. When I asked her about a continuing education course she'd been excited about, she said, "Oh, that," and changed the subject. Later alone, she told me Ryan thought she was already working too many hours and adding more studying would strain the family. I said, "What do you think?" She said, "He's probably right." Natalie did not say things like that. Natalie had opinions. Natalie had plans. Then Owen was born. And everything I'd been half watching from a distance came into focus, slowly, like a photograph developing. She went back to work after 12 weeks because she wanted to. Ryan's response, in front of me, was, she couldn't last at home. Some women just aren't built for it. He said it like he was explaining her to me. Like she wasn't sitting right there. I watched her not react. That scared me more than anything, he said. Over the next 2 years, I noticed other things. She stopped wearing sleeveless shirts. She wore her hair differently, always down. She laughed too quickly, apologized constantly, never ordered what she actually wanted at restaurants. When I brought her tulips, she put them in water before Ryan came home and made some comment about how he didn't like clutter. Tulips are not clutter. They are your favorite flower, and you used to have them on your kitchen table every single spring. I tried talking to her once, directly. She told me that all marriages have rough patches and that I didn't understand Ryan's pressure levels at work. She told me I was being protective in a way that wasn't helpful. She asked me to please just let them figure it out. I backed off. I have regretted it ever since. A year before the graduation party, I came to the house unannounced on a Wednesday afternoon. Natalie answered the door with a dish towel in her hand and a bruise at her wrist that she pulled her sleeve over before she said hello. I saw it. She knew I saw it. "Don't," she said. "Not hello. Don't." I came inside. We sat in the kitchen. Owen was at school. We had an hour. I asked her to tell me the truth. She cried. Quietly, the way she always cries, like she's rationing her grief. She said it wasn't as bad as it looked. She said Ryan had been under enormous stress since a business deal fell through and he'd grabbed her arm harder than he meant to. She said it was the first time. I asked if she was sure. She looked at her hands. I gave her a number for the domestic violence hotline in Franklin County. I wrote it on a piece of paper and tucked it inside the cover of the cookbook I'd brought her, where she'd find it. But Ryan wouldn't. I told her my house was open any time. Any time, I said. Day or night. She nodded. She told me she loved me. She did not call the hotline. Or if she did, she didn't tell me. The months between that conversation and the graduation party were the slowest of my life. I called every few days. We talked about Owen, about the weather, about the garden she was trying to start in the backyard. We didn't talk about Ryan. We talked around him like a piece of furniture you've learned not to bump. I kept thinking, she's still there. As long as she's still on the phone, she's still there. And then the night of the party. After Gerald made his comment, learn to take a win, women today, I crossed the room. The conversation had moved on, the way those things do when everyone decides it's easier to pretend. Ryan was telling a story to prayer. Natalie was holding her own elbows. I put my hand on my daughter's arm. Natalie, I said, can I talk to you for a minute? Ryan looked at me. We're in the middle of a conversation, Judith. I'm talking to my daughter. His eyes went cold. He smiles when he's angry, Ryan. It's the most unsettling thing about him. She's fine, he said. Right, Nat? She started to say yes. I watched it form on her lips. She doesn't look fine, I said. Mom, she started. What happened to your arm? I said. I wasn't planning to say it. It came out like something that had been waiting a long time. The room went quieter. Not completely silent, but quieter. The way rooms do when people are pretending not to listen. Natalie pulled her sleeve down. I told you that was nothing. You told me that a year ago. Let me see, Judith. Ryan's voice dropped. That's the warning tone. I had heard it directed at Natalie many times and had never been on the receiving end of it. This is not the time or the place. You're right, I said. It should have been addressed a long time ago, in private, but since my daughter keeps telling me it's nothing, here we are. Gerald moved closer. Judith, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is a family matter and you're causing a scene. I am Natalie's mother, I said. I am her family. She has a husband, Gerald said. I looked at him for a long moment. Yes, I said, that's the problem. The room was very still. I turned back to Natalie. She was looking at me with panic that I recognized as love in disguise. She was terrified, but she wasn't walking away. I need you to come outside with me, I said, quietly. Just for her. 5 minutes. Just us. Ryan stepped forward. She's not going anywhere with you right now. Ryan, Natalie said. It was barely a sound. He looked at her. That smile again. She'll be back in a minute, Natalie said, and I didn't know if she was talking about herself or about me, but she was moving, she was following me, and I walked us through the glass doors onto the patio, away from the string lights, into the part of the yard where the garden beds were bare and it smelled like May. We stood in the dark. I waited. She didn't say anything for almost a minute. Then she sat down on the stone garden bench and put her face in her hands. How bad? I said. She didn't answer for a long time. Mom, I'm so tired, she finally said. I sat beside her. I did not touch her. Sometimes people who have been held wrong for a long time need space before they can receive the kind of touch that means something good. I know you are, I said. I don't want Owen to grow up like this. Her voice broke on it. I keep thinking I'll fix it, that if I'm better, more patient, less, I don't know. Less what? Less what? Less of whatever he says I'm too much of. I have been a mother for 34 years. I have cried in my car, in bathrooms, in the parking lot of grocery stores. But sitting on that bench in the May dark while my daughter described herself as too much was one of the hardest moments of my life. You are not too much, I said. She made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Natalie. I turned to face her. What would you tell one of your patients? If a woman came to you with what you're describing, with a husband who speaks to her the way Ryan speaks to you, who has grabbed her hard enough to leave marks, what would you tell her? She was quiet. You know what you would say, I said. You know exactly what you would say. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. It's not that simple when it's your own life. I know it's not. But I need you to hear yourself say it. What would you tell her? Long pause. I'd tell her it was going to get worse, she said. Not better. Yes. And that she had to leave before it did. Yes. She looked at the dark garden. I don't have any money that's mine. He manages the accounts. I have a credit card with a $500 limit for groceries and gas. She said it plainly, like she'd practiced saying it to herself. I don't even know how I would start. That's why I'm here, I said. That's what I'm for. We sat there for a while. I could hear the party inside, muffled. At some point, Owen's face appeared at the glass door. He found us in the dark, and Natalie raised her hand and he raised his back, and he went away. That's when I knew she had decided. Not all the way. Not tonight. But something had shifted. We went back inside. Ryan was watching the door. He said something about fresh air and long conversations and Judith's talent for drama. Gerald laughed. Connie stood with her wine glass and looked at the wall. Priya had quietly found her purse and was edging toward the exit. I stayed until the party ended. I helped Natalie clear plates. I said goodbye to everyone with the even politeness you develop after 30 years of teaching high school. I hugged Owen for a long time. At the door, Ryan shook my hand again. Glad you came, he said. Take care of my daughter, I said. He smiled. Always do. I drove home in silence. I called my son Andrew from the driveway, sitting in the dark, and told him everything I had been carrying for 3 years. He was quiet through most of it and then said, Mom, why didn't you tell me? I said because Natalie asked me not to. He said, okay. What do we do now? I said, we wait, but we get ready. That night I called my bank and confirmed I could add someone to my checking account. I looked up the state bar website and found 3 family law attorneys in Columbus with strong domestic violence case histories. I wrote their names in my address book. I pulled the spare key to my house from the kitchen drawer and put it in my purse. I didn't sleep much. I lay in the dark and thought about Natalie at 8 years old, reading medical books, making plans before she needed them. She called me 11 days later. It was a Tuesday, 4 in the morning. I answered before the first ring finished. Mom. Her voice was strange, flat. I'm here. I need you to come. Are you safe right now? We're at a neighbor's. Owen is with me. We're okay, she breathed. I'm not going back, Mom. I know, I said. I'm on my way. She was at the home of a woman down the street, Donna, who had apparently heard things through shared walls before and opened her door without asking questions. Natalie was sitting on Donna's couch with a dish towel full of ice against her cheekbone, and Owen asleep with his head in her lap. There was a police officer in the kitchen writing in a notebook. She stood up when she saw me very carefully, and I crossed the room and held her for a long time without saying anything. The officer came out and explained that Ryan had been taken in for the night. He'd been charged with domestic battery, a Class A misdemeanor under Ohio law that could carry up to 6 months and a fine. Though the prosecutor would determine next steps, there were bruises on her face and forearm. A neighbor had called 911 after hearing Ryan shouting, then hearing nothing, which is sometimes worse. By the time officers arrived, Natalie had already gotten Owen out. He grabbed me by the hair, she said later, very quietly, when it was just the 2 of us. Owen was asleep in Donna's guest room. I told him I had been in contact with a lawyer, that I was going to file. She stopped. He grabbed me by the hair and I thought, okay, this is it. This is the last time I let this be something that happens to me. She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her face in years. Not happiness. Not relief yet. Something older and quieter than either. I should have left a long time ago, she said. You left now, I said. In the morning, I drove her and Owen to my house. I put them in the room where Natalie grew up, where the same faded curtains are still on the windows because I could never bring myself to change them. Owen bounced on the mattress once and looked at Natalie for permission, and she said, "Go ahead." And he bounced again. It was the first time I'd seen him act like a 7-year-old in longer than I could remember. The weeks that followed were not easy. I want to say that honestly, because stories that skip over the hard middle are not honest and they do not help anyone. There were days when Natalie sat at my kitchen table and stared out the window for 20 minutes without speaking. Days when Owen had nightmares and woke up calling for his father in a voice that broke something in all of us. Days when Ryan's attorney filed motions that made no sense except as harassment, claiming Natalie was an unstable mother, that she had abandoned the marital home, that Owen's welfare was at risk. She had documented things Natalie had. I found this out slowly. She had a folder on her phone, locked, with photographs going back 2 years. Bruises dated and described. Screen captures of text messages where Ryan called her things I will not repeat here. She had kept a journal in her work locker. 2 years of careful clinical documentation in her own handwriting, because that is how nurses think even when they are also victims. Especially then. Her attorney, a woman named Gail Whitmore, took one look at the folder and said, "This is more than most people come in with. Let's talk about what you want." Natalie wanted full custody of Owen. She wanted the ability to return to work without Ryan filing interference motions. She wanted to be done. Ryan fought it. Of course he did. Gerald hired a second attorney to sit beside Ryan's first one, because that is the kind of family they are, the kind where throwing money at a problem is the same as solving it. They claimed Natalie's nursing schedule made her an inconsistent parent. They produced a character witness who had known Ryan for 15 years and had never seen him be anything but good-natured. They suggested that Natalie's relationship with me was enmeshed and that my presence in Owen's life was disruptive. I testified. I sat in that chair and told the truth, calmly, because I have spent 30 years standing in front of rooms full of people who would rather not listen and learning how to make them listen anyway. I told the court what I had observed over 6 years. I described the party. I described the bruise I saw on Natalie's wrist and the way she pulled her sleeve before she said hello. I described Owen's stillness. A child that still has learned that stillness is safer than noise, I said. And I saw 2 of the jurors write something down. Ryan's attorney tried to suggest I was overprotective, that my perspective was limited, that it was common for mothers of adult daughters to project their own anxieties. I've been a mother for 34 years, I said. I know the difference between anxiety and evidence. The trial lasted 4 days. Natalie testified on the 3rd day. She sat in the witness stand in a grey blazer and read from her documentation and answered every question directly, without crying, without drama, because she had already processed this, had been processing it for years. And now she was just telling the truth into a microphone with people writing it down. That was all she was doing. When Ryan's attorney asked if she had ever provoked her husband, she paused. "I'm a nurse practitioner," she said. "I've worked full nights, I've raised a son, I've maintained a home, and I've spent 6 years trying to be exactly what Ryan needed me to be. If that's provoking someone, I can't help what that says about what he needed." Nobody in the courtroom made a sound. The jury was out for less than a day. Ryan was convicted of domestic battery. He received 18 months probation, mandatory bachelor's intervention programming, and a no-contact order. He did not go to prison. I know that is the part some people will find unsatisfying. The law is slow and imperfect and more forgiving of first-time charges than the damage they represent. But the family court order gave Natalie full physical custody of Owen with supervised visitation for Ryan, contingent on completion of his intervention program. He was required to pay child support and a portion of her attorney's fees. It was not everything, but it was enough to start. Connie called me 2 weeks after the verdict. Not Gerald. Connie. She asked if she could speak to me and I said yes, and we met at a coffee shop near my house, a Tuesday morning with other people's ordinary lives moving around us. She sat across from me with her hands around her cup and said, "I should have said something. Over the years, I knew things were. I should have said something." I looked at her for a moment. "Why didn't you?" I asked. She was quiet for a long time. Gerald doesn't like it when I make things complicated, she finally said. And what does Gerald think now? He's angry, she said. He thinks Natalie was disloyal. He thinks you interfered in his son's marriage. She paused. I think he's wrong, but I don't say that to him. She reached into her purse and took out an envelope. She slid it across the table to me. It's for Owen, for his college fund or whatever Natalie thinks is best. Gerald doesn't know. I looked at the envelope. Connie, I know it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't, I said. But it's the right thing to do. She nodded. She finished her coffee. Before she left, she stood up and said, How does she look? Natalie, is she okay? She's getting there, I said. I'm glad, she said. And she sounded for just a moment like a woman who had been waiting a long time to be glad about something. Natalie went back to work 6 weeks after moving into my house. Her supervisor had held her position because she is the kind of employee people hold positions for. She drove herself to the hospital the first morning and called me from the parking lot before she went in. Okay, she said. I'm here. I know, I said. I didn't need to call, she said. I just wanted to. I know that too, I said. Owen started with a therapist recommended by his school. The first few sessions, he didn't say much. By the 3rd month, he was drawing pictures and explaining them, which the therapist said was progress, and I believe her. He still sleeps with the light on, but the nightmares come less often now. Last week, he asked Natalie if they could get a dog. She said, Let me think about it. I said yes immediately. She gave me a look across the kitchen table and I said, Grandmothers have different rules. And Owen laughed, a full-body 7-year-old laugh, the kind that takes over his whole face. I live for those moments now. I didn't know how much I'd been starving for them. It has been almost 2 years since the night of the graduation party. Natalie has been approved for a mortgage on a small house in Worthington, 20 minutes from me. She designed the whole renovation plan herself, where the light will come in, where Owen's room will go, where she'll put the kitchen table, where they'll eat breakfast together on school mornings. She made a list of everything she wants in the garden. Tulips are at the top. Owen knows some of the truth. We have told him what a 7, now 9-year-old can hold, that sometimes adults make choices that hurt people they love, that what his father did was not okay and was not Owen's fault and was never going to be okay, that his father is getting help, that Owen can feel however he feels about all of it and none of his feelings are wrong. He asked me once at bedtime, when I was tucking him in during one of his sleepovers at my house, Grandma, why didn't someone stop it sooner? I sat on the edge of his bed for a while. Sometimes people don't stop things sooner because they're afraid, I said. And sometimes the person being hurt doesn't feel safe enough to ask for help. But that's not their fault. That's how the fear works. That's sad, he said. It is, I said. Did Mom ask for help? When she was ready, I said. And people were there. He thought about this. I would have helped her, he said. I would right there. I know, baby, I said. I know you would have. I kissed his forehead and sat there until he fell asleep, and then I went to the hallway and cried as quietly as I could, because he is 9 years old and he would have helped her. He was right there, and no child should have to hold that thought. But he is not holding it alone. That's what's different now. There is something I have learned on the other side of all of this that I keep trying to find the right words for. It is something about silence, about the difference between peace and quiet. For years, Natalie's house was very quiet. Nobody raised their voice. Everything was in order. It looked from the outside like a calm life, and all of that quiet was the shape of terror, was the sound of a person shrinking down to the smallest possible version of herself so she would stop being a target. My house is loud now. Owen runs down the hallway. The dog we got, a 3-year-old beagle mix named Biscuit, barks at squirrels through the living room window. Natalie plays music in the morning while she makes coffee, something she told me Ryan found annoying. We have disagreements about dishes and whose turn it is to call Andrew and whether Owen needs a coat. It is messy and imperfect, and some mornings everyone is running late and nobody can find the good scissors. It is the loudest, most chaotic, most alive this house has been in 11 years. If there is a woman reading this who is in the quiet I'm describing, the wrong kind of quiet, the kind that costs something, I want you to know that I see you. I know it doesn't feel like there's a way out. I know the logistics feel impossible, the fear feels permanent, and the hope feels like something that belongs to other people. It doesn't. There are resources. In Ohio, the Domestic Violence Network can be reached at 644-7 Ohio. The Domestic Violence Network can be reached at 644. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233, available 24 hours a day. If you can't talk, you can text START to 88788. There are attorneys who take these cases on reduced fees. There are advocates who will sit with you through every step. There are neighbors like Donna who will open the door at 4 in the morning and not ask questions. And if you are a mother, a father, a sister, a friend, watching someone you love disappear slowly, stay close. Stay in contact. Don't let them push you all the way out. Leave the door open. Say it out loud. Write it down. My house is always open. I mean it. Any time. Because the moment will come. It will come when it comes, not when you want it, not when it's convenient, not before a great deal of pain. But it will come. And when it does, you want to be ready. I was ready, and my daughter is here. She is loud and she is busy, and she is tired in a way that is finally just tired, and she is growing a garden in May, and she is exactly who she always was. She was there all along. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it actually costs to stay silent. Not the dramatic kind of silence, not the kind you choose in a courtroom or at a funeral, the everyday kind. The kind where you smile at the right moment and change the subject and tell yourself it's not your place. I did that for years with Ryan. I watched and I worried and I pulled back when Natalie asked me to, and I told myself I was respecting her choices. But there's a version of respect that is just fear, wearing a nicer name. I was afraid of pushing her further away. I was afraid of being wrong. And while I was afraid, my daughter was disappearing. That's the thing about damage that happens slowly. It doesn't announce itself. There's no single moment you can point to and say, that's when it started. It's 100 small moments. The first time she ordered for herself and then changed her order when he gave her a look. The first time she didn't mention a career milestone because it might make dinner tense. The first time Owen sat too still in a room full of noise. You see these things and you file them away because each one alone seems like nothing. And by the time you understand what you've been watching, years have passed. What I know now is that silence has a shape. It takes up space. It teaches people around it what is and isn't possible. Ryan's silence taught Natalie that her ambitions were inconvenient. Gerald's laughter taught Ryan that cruelty could wear the face of a joke. Connie's 30 years of looking at the floor taught everyone at that table what a woman was supposed to do when she disagreed. And my silence, my careful, well-intentioned, terrified silence, taught Natalie that even the person who loved her most wasn't sure she was worth the disruption. I don't say that to punish myself. I say it because it's true, and because the truth of it is what made me stand up at that party when everything in me wanted to stay seated. I had already used up my supply of waiting. I had nothing left but honesty. What happened to Ryan is what tends to happen when someone has spent years operating under the assumption that no one will ever actually hold them accountable. He had a father who cheered, a mother who stayed quiet, a wife who apologized for existing, and a world that mostly looked the other way. That kind of environment doesn't make a person evil. It makes them confident that evil has no consequences. And the moment that confidence is interrupted, the moment someone stands up at a party and says, I see what is happening here, the whole structure starts to show its cracks. He's serving probation now and attending a batterer's intervention program that I hope, for Owen's sake, does something real. I don't know if it will. I don't spend much energy on that question anymore. What I spend my energy on is Natalie, on Owen bouncing on the mattress in her old room, on Biscuit barking at squirrels, on the music she plays in the morning now just because she can. Natalie documented everything quietly for 2 years because she is a nurse, and nurses observe and record, and somewhere underneath the fear she knew she was going to need it. That is the intelligence of survival. That is what resilience actually looks like. Not the dramatic moment of escape, but the 2 years of quiet preparation that made the escape possible. She did not leave because I stood up at a party. She left because she had already decided, in some deep and careful part of herself, that she was worth leaving for. I just happened to be there when the decision was ready to become action. That's what I want anyone who is watching this to hold on to. Not that someone will come save you, but that the work you are doing right now, the surviving, the enduring, the quiet noting of every date and every bruise, that work is not wasted. It is building something, and when you are ready, it will be there waiting for you. My house is still open. It always will be.